Lime Rock Park, nestled in Salisbury, Connecticut, has been a hub for motor racing since 1957. The track, built from an old gravel pit, quickly became a popular destination for motor enthusiasts. However, its presence sparked a long-lasting controversy between the thrill of racing and the tranquility of the local community.
When the track first opened, people arriving for church on Sunday who were accustomed to parking next to the cemetery discovered that people at the track had already filled the spaces where they were accustomed to parking. So they got their noses out of joint. There was some griping about the noise, but not a lot. More griping about all the people, that there were so many new people in town who nobody knew and who didn't necessarily act like the people who lived there. The big thing, and this is one Sunday, the bishop was making his visit to Trinity and did his normal bishop things like march in the procession and so forth. And just at the moment that he was getting up in the pulpit to preach, a fellow who's apparently had a big bore muscle car of the 1970s, got car out on the track and decided to do hot laps. The bishop across the street could not be heard past the first row. The bishop was unpleasantly surprised.
The park was built in 1957 out of the remnants of an old gravel pit, and the pit belonged to the Vale family of Lime Rock, and Jim Vale, who owned the property, had always been interested in auto racing, and I guess he just thought at a certain point that hey, why don't I build a track here? This would be really cool to have a racetrack here. And at that time, the town of Salisbury did not have any zoning code at all, right? And zoning, just so you know, it has to do with land use. And so most towns, almost all of them in Connecticut now, I believe all of them, have rules in terms of how you can use land. The issue of Sunday racing is the big one that everybody looks at. The church and the powers that be higher up in the church were all very against this. And finally, a lawsuit was filed. A group was formed before that called the Lime Rock Protective Association. They filed a lawsuit and they wanted to stop the Sunday racing, and they got a court judgment, what they call an injunction. It's an order from the court to stop doing what you're doing. And that has essentially governed operations ever since. They have been forbidden, not by law, but by a court injunction from holding Sunday races.
The lawyers in Lakeville heard that there was a land use issue. They called and said, do you have anybody there that works on land use? And that's how the case got to me. To regulate auto racing at the track, and in particular to prevent Sunday racing.
Why is the Citizens Council against racing on Sundays?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first is that racing creates noise. And noise is a form of air pollution. And what's different and interesting about noise from auto racing is it's a very loud noise that comes in loud bursts. In the particular case of Lime Rock, there were two other concerns. For 60 years or so since Lime Rock was founded, they have never raced on Sundays, and many people in the area bought their houses on the assumption that there would be no racing on Sunday.
Right now, the matter is pretty much settled because the Supreme Court of the state basically said the town has the authority to regulate the operations, some of the operations of the track, and they've decided that they don't want racing on Sundays, and pretty much, you're stuck with it, and there's not a whole lot that can be done. So I think that's essentially where we are. There are people who live near the track who I think would love to put it out of business, just because they don't want the noise and the nuisance. But that's basically where we are now, and I have not seen any other movement since then.
Lime Rock argues that economically it needs Sunday races to be competitive, but the community doesn't think so.
Maximizing or improving your financial position, whether it's making a profit or more revenue, whatever, is not generally a relevant factor when you're dealing with zoning and land use. You can't go to the zoning board and say, I mean, obviously you ask for a zoning variance or a permit, it's often driven by financial considerations, but you can't say I'm entitled to a zoning permit because it will allow me to make more money. Zoning is concerned with land use, not with profits.
The ban on Sunday racing is still in place.
You may have seen this in the last 3 or 4 years. If you do you see any of these yellow signs that say Peaceful Sundays? You've probably seen those around, right? Those people still exist. They still don't want the track to expand its operations, and they certainly don't want Sunday racing. But no, right now I do not see I've not heard of any movement to do anything else or further restrict the track's operations.
Do you think that there's a possible outcome where both sides of this Lime Rock situation are happy with what they get?
No, I don't see it, because they want opposite things. The track wants to expand, and most of the opponents of the track actually, they like it the way it is, or they would like to further restrict the track's operations. So I don't think the two sides really have anything in common at this point. So I don't see how they could resolve it amicably. Right now, I just think they're kind of holding their noses and tolerating each other.
Here comes Speed Racer, he's a demon on wheels. He's a demon and he's gonna be chasing after someone.